Hello, I am Zinfogel. Alright, this is the mildly awaited continuation to the June 2021 Datamine video. In this part, we're going to check out the BP Sync pairs, Solgaleo, and the Tangela Family. And hopefully, this won't be another hour-long video. I wouldn't be able to take it, but it probably won't be. In a very broad way of speaking, the BP Sync pairs are one-trick ponies. They have very solid kits, but they are very straightforward, and their grids are also very simple. There isn't a whole lot to dwell upon here. Now, there is a question that you probably want me to answer, and that is which BP Sync pair to pull for first. And that is a good question because you can get a BP Sync pair for 100 BP, which is very cheap. And my answer to that is I don't know. This is the same answer I give to every person who asks me which banner to pull from. I don't know, dude. It depends on your needs. And you know your roster of characters far better than I ever will. For example, Lieutenant Surge here is a very good pick for starting players because he's the easiest way to get maximum critical hit rate for the entire party. And he also has some very good buffs. If you like Toxic Stalling on Champion Stadium, then you can go for Erika and Tangela. They are very solid for that. If you don't have a good Dark type striker and you have all your other bases covered, then Karen and Umbreon are excellent, so on and so forth. My recommendation would be watching this video and get opinions from other Pokemon Masters content creators and just assess your needs, and then you can decide which is the best. But very broadly speaking, I think that Lieutenant Surge has the most solid kit, but they are all very, very good in their own right. So, with all that said, let's get started. I was glorifying this guy earlier, so let's kick this off with Lieutenant Surge and Raichu. And in future, I'm gonna be calling BP Sync pairs as BP Surge, for example, just in case I need to distinguish them from their regular counterparts, but nobody's ever using Electro. Anyway, BP Surge is strong because of his buffing kit. The trainer move has Dire Hero Plus with +1 defense for the entire party. Alright, and X attack call, so +4 attack for entire party. This is Hilbert Elite. 3-5 Hilbert and Samuro have a faster buffing efficiency, but BP Surge reaches the same quality of buffs, especially when most physical strikers can top off their attack already. And if you are so inclined as to let Surge handle that, then you have X attack all NPR on the grid. And now, this is a big deal for BP Surge because this is the easiest way to obtain maximum critical hit rate for an entire party. And crits are everything in this game. It's essentially a free multiplier and it bypasses defensive buffs and light screen. When you have a +3 crit, you always guarantee that you land critical hits with your moves, and it also gives you an 80% chance of landing a crit with your Sync move. You will notice that most of the top tier supports have the ability to maximize critical hit rate. It is a big deal, and Surge is an easy way of accessing that. Now, that's not the only thing that Surge can do. The rest of the kit is also quite solid. You got decent defensive stats. This is good for a 4-star. And somewhat comparable to Chering, so you kind of want help from Skyla to top off your defenses, as well as the potions, but Surge can handle tanking if you need to do that. He's also got a very good speed stat. This is Arena tier, pre-mega, and if Surge can accrue speed buffs, then he can generate gauge for you, which can happen because you have Post Haste 4. This is a 50% chance of giving you +2 speed when you get hit by an attack, so there's your speed buffs, and you also have Innate Light, which helps for Cresselia Legendary Arena, and Bog with Grimsley, I think. Yeah, that guy has a Thunder Wave. Speaking of Thunder Wave, you can also spread Paralysis yourself, and it's a reliable Paralysis with this +10 accuracy tile on the grid, which is available at 1-5, and this is amazing news for supports in general, because it means that the DNA is no longer afraid of giving them tech utility. And this is what gives Lieutenant Surge his distinguishing niche from other crit buffers. He's a crit buffer with reliable paralysis, of which we have some mild competition from Signasurelesa and Rotom, but her chances to paralyze with Hostile Environment 1 Thundershock are just 20%. And at most she can maximize crit for a single party member, so she's not competing with Surge in that department. For some compositional references, Lieutenant Surge best pairs with paralysis synergy users who have issues spreading paralysis themselves. So big beneficiaries would be Bonner, but most importantly, Claire and Kingdra. Claire massively benefits from Lieutenant Surge because of the roll compression that he provides for her, and you can afford to bring some range setter on the tier slot, and that will make a really strong free-to-play Dragon-type striking core. But you go a step further and bring a really wily unit like Archie and Kyogre with a single Hoenn Spirit Boost and a 5-star potential. Claire can now damage Zinnia plus Archie due to the absurd amount of multipliers that she's getting. Although, if Zinnia involves Phoebe for the triple Hoenn Spirit Boost, then she can come out on top. But do consider that Claire has better gauge generation with Racing Rain 2 plus Lieutenant Surge's speed buffs. While Lieutenant Surge plus Claire and Archie is still below in power to Lance and Dragonite, it's still disgustingly strong and very easy to access if you decide to pull for Archie. Alright, and as you've noticed, VP Simpers have grids, which massively extends their utility. And the currently accessible ones are 4 stars, so you can candy them and get access to the full grid, which is quite nice. But DNA got lazy here. If you switch between characters of the same role, you will notice that the grids are very much copy-pasted, which arises a strange issue where some of the tiles are quite expensive. Stalwart plus Unbending at 16 energy? That is not a great deal. And on full grids, there is this issue where you have to pick what you need, so they are not easily customizable. Either way, 1-5 Raichu only gets the Thunder Wave accuracy tile as well as Thunder Punch MGR1. Okay, I guess. 2-5 gains a few more tools. You get a Quick Cure to recover from interference once, you have Stalwart to prevent special defense drops, Toughen Up and Tighten Up 1, 20% chance of raising defensive stats when you get hit by a move. You have Thunder Punch MGR3 as well as Fast Track 3, and this is a great way of generating gauge in case you got unlucky with Post Haste procs and Thunder Wave MGR3. There is also MGR3 for the trainer moves. This is MGR, no move point refresh, so these are bait tiles, it's not worth going for. But you can go for most of these and you will have an alright grid that can operate successfully. Now, the full grid, you get some proper recovery tools. There is Fear State 4 as well as Synchro Healing 1. This is Lily and Clefairy is innate passive, where you use a sync move, you restore 20% HP for the entire party. But you also are sacrificing your sync move when using it, because BP Raichu happens to have a special sync move when you are a physical attack buffer. I guess this was an attempt to nerf Raichu and prevent it from becoming a proper striker, because we also don't have any multipliers for this guy, besides Electric Terrain. But I wouldn't use Synchro Healing 1 because you cannot have a 6-star EX potential with BP Surge. It's not really worth it. You have Unbending, kinda boring compared to Team Fast Track 4 though. This is a 50% chance of raising speed for the entire party, so that's excellent chances of generating gauge. Really good utility. And you also get proper NPRs for the turn moves. So your basic Lieutenant Surge grid would look something like this. You want the recovery in case you are tanking, and you go for Fast Track 3 on Thunder Punch because you have to, because it's on the way to Fear State 4, so you don't really have a choice. And Team Fast Track 4, so you can generate gauge by spamming Thunder Wave or Thunder Punch. So yeah, really good. And then you gotta choose what you want. You can go for X Attack NPR, I'm not sure why you would do that, but it's available. You can go for trainer move NPR, and this may look pointless, but when you reuse the trainer move, you can raise defense. So in case Surge is your only source of defense buffs, that may be worth going for. Outside of that though, you can also go for Endure, just like how I typically play Hilbert on Champion Stadium, just to give you that extra tanking buffer for precinct clears. It's quite handy. Thunder Punch MGR3, and really that's about it. BP Surge fixes most physical strikers by himself. You cannot go wrong with this guy. Okay, let's continue with a personal favorite. Here we have VP, Erika, and Tangela. Grass tech with some interesting utility. I chose her as my first BP sync pair because I think she gives me some better consistency for showcases that I want to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to be a great sync pair for you. BP Erika's kit revolves around the status damage. You have the almighty Absorb. Funny meme, bro, thanks I guess. But more importantly, you have a Toxic and Infestation. So you have reliable Bad Poison and reliable Trap. And I am saying reliable Bad Poison because you have accuracy tiles on the 1-5 grid, so you can always land it. Now, your first instinct might be classifying VP Erika as a tool for stall archetypes, and you'd be right, she's really good in those. But I think restricting her to Master Mode Toxic stalls is a waste of her potential, because a lot of sync pairs can benefit from poison. For example, Koga, Plumeria, Sengasu Leaf after Mega Evolving. Then there is also Trap, which lasts for a long time and can enable some strikers like Wallace and Milotic, and again Trify Karen. So with some creativity, you can get more value out of BP Erika outside of Toxic stalls. Now, BP Erika's stats are mildly disappointing. This is better than whatever garbage Lucy's got going. BP Erika is a direct upgrade to Lucy and Seviper, and I have a particular disdain for Lucy because outside of Toxic stalls, her kid is utter garbage. I really don't like her. Now, BP Erika has below average bulk. She's mildly squishy, though we can grab some defensive tiles on the grid to patch that up, but I would not tank with her. Though, for what it's worth, you have an okay special attack stat. The trainer move raises special attack and special defense by a couple of stages, so that helps with defensive buffing. And as a tech sync pair, you also have a sync multiplier. When a target is trapped, you gain double damage, and when invested, she can do some alright damage with her sync nukes with her grid multipliers. Now, BP Erika's passives are a bit of a mess, but it is a large part of who she is. You've got a Spinning Sun 2 for some gauge on sun structures, and as a grass type, it means that BP Erika pairs with a different array of strikers compared to other poison users. So I can see a structure of Lyra, Signasu, Leaf, and BP Erika working very well on 3v9s, though full forces appear to be dead in the foreseeable future. And most importantly, you have a propelling move 5, and this is really good because it gives you a 60% chance of regaining some move gauge even if you miss your attack, which is only going to happen if you don't grab toxic accuracy tiles. And in my opinion, this is a big part of BP Erika's kit. She's amazing at generating move gauge when complemented with MGRs on her full grid. You got MGR 3 for every single move you can toss, and when complemented by Propelling Move 5, it means that you probably won't even need to bring a speed support alongside BP Erika. And you also got a Poké Trap 1 to enhance a bit of trap recoil. So, 1-5 Erika only has the Toxic Accuracy tiles, better than nothing. 2-5 Erika has MGR 3 for every single attacking move, and from experience, I can tell you that Erika is going to surprise you with her gauge generation. She is very spammy, and I really enjoy that aspect of her kit. The full grid gives you some healing tools, First Aid 4 for a healing burst, as well as Healing Zone 1 for some synergy with sun structures, and Solar Shield to protect from status conditions, though even with both of these, I would not tank with Erika, she's not that bulky. You also got a Poké Trap 2 to enhance Infestation is Trap Recoil, as well as some multipliers. Now, we'll get to that in a bit, but you are never properly striking with Absorb. Its base power is downright pathetic. Now, the typical BP Erika and Tangela grid runs Poke Trap 2, because you are spamming Infestation, you might as well get extra damage out of it. And First Aid 4, it's just good to have a random heal just in case. Now, the grid I would run, personally, would be this, with MGRs. Like I mentioned, I really like how good Erika is at generating gauge, so I appreciate MGRs, though some people would drop this and go for train move NPR as well as some extra bulk. But I like having the MGRs better. So yeah, just go for all the bulk tiles and not much else you can do with Erika, you know? She's only there to spam status and interferences. But if you want to do something fun, you can run Erika as a Signuker. As a fun fact, with all the multipliers as well as Critical Strike 2 as a lucky skill, BP Erika hits slightly harder than Haymaker Steven and Metagross, so you can expect that threshold of damage. And then there is also the possibility of running here on Sun Structures. Again, the focus on Poke Trap 2 to enhance trap damage, while you also got the passive recovery from Healing Zone 1 and the chance to shield AoE status conditions. Now, the meme build that you should never run. I am going to attempt it just to see how it does, but it will probably be terrible. You can do full absorb, but at this threshold, you've only got a 32 base power move, the 3 out of 5. So with the multipliers, you've only got an effective 50 BP, pretty much. Which is sad. I mean, it is on a 1-bar move, but still, most of your damage is coming from the Signuke, and this kind of functions as a vampire kid. A 50 VP move is not draining that much as from enemies, so I'm not sure what to make of this, but the tiles are there, and DNA definitely had an intention of running Erika this way. So I will attempt it, but please don't run this. You just stick with the previous builds, and I am telling you, on the correct structures, you can get a lot of value out of BP Erika. Now for some real numbers. Here we have VP Karen and Umbreon, Dark Striker, and DNA somehow managed to take the very bulky Umbreon and turn it into a DPS unit, but you know, that's just Master's logic. So this is a recoil-based striker, and normally I make fun of Eggmons for even having recoil moves, but it's salvageable for base Karen, because she's got a Stanfast 5 as well as regeneration on the turn move. It also gives you +2 attack. And this is fine considering that you have a large HP pool, but you are going to want some potion support on longer encounters like Champion Stadium. And if you're really considering BP Karen as a Dark Striker, you want to hoard enough candies to raise her to 35 sync level, so you can have Double Edge Stanfast 3 as well as Double Edge Stanfast 5 additional Stanfast tiles, so that will make Karen a lot more consistent as a Double Edge spammer. Besides that, you got alright attack, somewhat squishy, average speed. This is okay for 4-star standards. You've got feint attack, you can raise crit. I don't know what else to say, dude. This is just a striker. The sync move doesn't have any side effect. You got Dark Shifted to turn Double Edge into a Dark type move, so you've got the super effective multiplier. And immunity to flinching. Okay, for Rock Slide, I suppose. So, where is Karen in current metagame? As a Dark Striker, she's better than Crunch Fall Hilbert, but still worse than Double Edge Fall Hilbert. Though compared to him, Karen has a lot more sustainability with her multiple Stanfast tiles as well as First Aid 4 available down there on the grid. She's strong. If you need a Dark Striker, Umbreon can totally cover your back. Now, grid-wise, the 1-5 left me speechless. The 2-5 has some sync multipliers, crit free 2 as well as double down 2. So this is an attempt in turning Umbreon into a Signuker, which is fine. You can deal decent damage that way. You also got Stanfast 3 to mitigate even more recoil damage. And you also got Power Surge 2, so you can reach Power Surge range on your own accord through Double Edge, which is fine, but the problem is that if you are on power resource range, you are probably knocking yourself out in the process. So this is mostly to give a parting gift to the enemy. And then we got the full grid, extra multipliers, an extra Standfast 5 tile. You always want to grab both of these. And well, there is also Dire Heat NPR to turn Karen into a more autonomous striker, but going for these tiles is so expensive that it's not worth it. So the build I would consider would be something like this. If I am solely running BP Karen for damage, you've got sinking tiles as well as critical strike 2 to enhance your moves as well as your sync. And you are going for power resource 2 because you might as well, it's on the way to a sinking tile. So just in case you can get that extra damage going, it's nice to have. So know that you have to consider how realistically you can reach a power source range with Karen Umbreon, because she does have some massive recoil mitigation. So instead of running power reserves, what you can do is go the other way to this sinking tile, because it allows you to get this attack plus 10 tile, which benefits double edge as well as your sync. And this frees up enough energy so you can go for another double edge tile. And in the long run, this has better offensive consistency. Regardless of the build that you use, please consider that Karen needs offensive support, and she has Dire Heat, so she can top herself off if needed. And you can also consider a pure DPS grid with a super duper effective 2 while skipping the sinking tiles. So this is mostly to be paired with another Dark Striker. For example, this will do very nicely with the Mask Royal and Incineroar, which are about to be released in a few weeks. So, yeah. You also got the Fear State 4, more sinking tiles, you know. Sorry for the lackluster analysis, but it's a striker, dude. It's just going to buff and deal damage, that's all they do. If DNA has the gall to make a BP, Fantina, and Drifblim, that's going to be so funny, dude. Anyway, here we have Morty Mismagius, who is a ghost support. And this has been highly in demand because our only ghost support at the moment is Phoebe and Dusnoir, who is an offensive buffer. They have a little bit of defensive utility as well as some good tanking stats, but Phoebe forces your hand into an offensive playstyle, where Morty is the polar opposite. He's got a very strong defensive turn move that buffs +2 defense and special defense for the entire party, so he's a defensive omni buffer. And you've also got a potion enhanced by innate Master Healer 1, so that's 50% heals on the base kit, that's really nice. And you have okay tanking stats. And regarding Morty's bulk, when he's at 4-star potential, he's slightly below a 4-star Professor Oak and Mew, but when he's at 5-star potential, he's more comparable to New Year's Lily and Ribombee. He has slightly higher bulk than her. Morty would not disappoint, especially when you consider the grid augmentations. And then you have Astonish. A spammy one-bar move, always great in a support to help advance the sync countdown, but the difference is that this has a 30% chance of forcing target to flinch. So that means that Morty can control the turn order once he's done with his defensive buffs, which is good, can't complain. It prevents damage and it also reshuffles the turn sequence, so it kind of helps. And you also got Confuse Ray for some techie utility, though this is not nearly as strong as BP Surge's Thunder Wave. There are Confusion synergy users, and you can use it to prevent damage from side mons, because normally they never have Listen Confusion. But I would prefer spamming Astonish instead, because, 30% chance of preventing any damage altogether. And nothing else. The sync move is special, and that is hilarious considering that this is a Rosa tier special attack stat. I love running supports as strikers, but damn, dude. It's like they went out of their way to prevent me from doing that with this unit. Offensive BP Morty and Mismagius is never happening. I am sorry. BP Morty is a very straightforward unit. You need defenses and healing, he's got your back. And the fact that he has a very spammy 1-bar move with good utility means that he will not interfere with the sync countdown, especially on Master Mode where you are dealing with the 4-bar move gauge. So yeah, he can really help there. As far as his grid goes, we got the 1-5, nothing too useful. The 2-5 is decent. You've got healthy healing for regeneration upon entry if you are at max HP, as well as Astonish MGR3. So you can even spam it and regain some move gauge with that. And Quick Cure, Stalwart, Toughen Up 1, Tighten Up 1, the same garbage that the BP Surge got on his own grid. As far as the full grid goes, you gain Fear State 4 used to prevent you from having to use a potion to heal yourself unnecessarily. And you also got another Potion Master Healing 1 tile, plus Potion NPR 3. So this is Pikachu is Potion Efficiency. Quite nice. And you've also got Synchro Healing 1. Very skippable though, because wasting your Sync move on a really weak support who doesn't have a 6-star EX boost is not worth it. But then you've also got the almighty Astonish Aggravation 1. So my guy BP Morty wants to give Acerola a run for her money. And while you can run a really tanky build with Mismagius with all the Potion Master Heal tiles, I would still recommend sacking Potion Master Healer 1 tile because it's rather expensive and it doesn't benefit you as much as you would think. For most Syncpers, a 10% is not that much. It's maybe 30 to 50 extra HP. So sacrificing 10 energy for that is worth it for you? That is something that you have to answer for yourself. But personally, I think this is a very skippable tiles, considering that you have the innate Master Healer 1. So what I would do would be this for a really tanky unit. If you are using Mismagius as your primary tank, then you can go for a turn move NPR to maximize defenses for everybody. Potion NPR 3, of course, this you always grab, so you have the chance to recharge Potion. And a Quick Cure for recovery from interferences, as well as a ton of defensive tiles. And with that, you actually start having some reasonably decent bulk, even at 4-star potential. And the other grid I would run would be sacrificing the NPR on the turn move, so you can go for Astonish Aggravation 1. You have a 60% chances of proccing Flinch with Astonish, and that is excellent chances. So you can keep enemies in check, prevent damage, and even Flinch lock center mons once you get rid of the sides. Morty is good. He has very good defensive utility. But that is the deal. On the very hyper-offensive metagame that we live in nowadays. And for the last 4-star BP Simper, we have Zinnia Salamence. And she's by far the most complex and versatile unit of this batch. She's got some good defensive utility on her base kit, but her grid multipliers can turn her into a force to be reckoned with. Now the issue is that this wouldn't be the first BP Simper I will pull because we have a lot of free-to-play Dragon-type strikers to use already. Amongst them Iris, Claire, Zinnia and Rayquaza, Cyrus, so this role is not highly in demand, but if you go for BP Zinnia, she can really surprise you with her damage numbers when played correctly. As for her stats, they are quite solid. 340 attack at 4-star potential is really good. She also got good defenses and average speed. No major complaints here. Move-wise, she's got a Dragon Claw. This is just your standard 2-bar move that you use when you are low on gauges. Nothing impressive, unlike Status Shield, which is a first for a playable character. So you may consider Marley and Arcanine's turn move, which blocks and recovers from status conditions, but Status Shield is different, because the description specifically states status moves. So it's going to block Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, just like Wallace's turn move, but in addition, it's also going to block direct attack debuffs, like from Leer or Eerie Impulse. But much like Wallace's turn move, it doesn't protect against the secondary effects from things like Slush Bomb. This is really good for Legendary Arena, because a lot of stages there depend on cheesing you with Thunder Wave or Toxic or really crippling status conditions like that. But then we have BP Zinnia is bread and butter. Dragon Rush, and this is the only reason you should be looking at her as a Simper in the first place. This is a brutally strong trigger move with a 20% chance of forcing the target to flinch. It has 75% accuracy, so it's unreliable, but the Zinnia turn move fixes it, because it gives you +2 accuracy, that's enough to make it 100% accurate, and it also gives you +1 defense, special defense, and speed. So you also got a Mad String 9 that boosts your attack by 1 stage every time Zinnia attacks in battle. Which means BP Zinnia only needs crit buffs to function as a proper striker, of which there is plenty of supports in demand to provide that for her. And I don't think I need to tell you how brutally strong Dragon Rush is. I had a comparison here between BP Zinnia and Champion Iris with her power-loving boosted Dragon Rushes, but perhaps a better comparison is Zinnia with Zinnia herself, with Salamence and Rayquaza. When you factor in all the multipliers, Salamence reaches a higher damage threshold than Rayquaza without Archie or Maxi, but Salamence can still benefit from Home Pride, so it still has a similar team cohesion. When you factor in Harry 3 plus Power Posture, BP Zinnia is DPS scales to the level of Fall Hilbert is Ramming Speed boosted double edges, so it is quite strong. It's really hard for me to conceptualize how strong this is without showing you, so I'm gonna put up a screenshot of Rion doing an off-type Master Mode clear with BP Zinnia. Now, of course, this is a 5-5 BP Zinnia, 5-star potential with Critical Strike 2 as a lucky skill. I think he even maxed her out, so it's like 6-star EX potential, but case in point, if you play Salamence right, it's easily the strongest physical Dragon-type striker in the game. Now, there is a few things I gloss over. You also have Terrify 1 to debuff enemies' attack when you enter the field. This is of course meant to play off a Power Posture. You can also enhance it with another Terrify 1. And you also got Aggravation 1 to improve Dragon Rush's chances of flinching. So then you have a really strong trigger move with 40% chances of preventing the enemy from attacking itself. It's really good. And then the Sync move, of course, based around flinching. When the enemy is flinching, it's enhanced. Now, Zinnia is a good Sync Nuker, but you can usually play her with other Sync pairs who Sync Nuke better. So I think she's better off as a DPS unit. For example, you can pair Zinnia with Champion Iris, so Champion Iris can finish off the Power Posture debuffs, and then Zinnia can go around the battlefield spreading Dragon Rush DPS, while Iris takes care of the Sync Nukes. And Zinnia can complement with other similar tech units like Kukui, maybe the Mask Royal, Malo and Sarina, Sync pairs who can either aid with attack debuffs or also flinch the enemy, so you can start taking advantage of Harry 3 immediately. Now, 1-5 Zinnia is a meme. The 2-5 grants her a couple Sync multipliers, but the real juice lies in the Dragon Rush multipliers. So you really want that 3-5 so Salamence can start functioning optimally. And BP Zinnia is one of the more complex units to read because it really depends on her partners. Depending on who you pack with her, it changes which tiles you can afford to grab or which tiles you can drop so you can further optimize your damage. Let's say that you're running BP Zinnia off-type, and you bring a Kukui for defense debuffs as well as flinches through Accelerock Staggering 5, and you have 6-star EX Hilbert, so you don't need Zinnia to Sync Nuke. Then you can do something like this, use maximum damage potential, grab a Terrify 1 to enhance Power Posture a bit further, and this will deal some really good damage, but let's say that you're running this on-type instead. Then maybe you can drop some of these tiles, so you can grab a Super Duper Effective 2, and then the Fear State 4, so you can have some heals just in case you need them. But let's say that you're still running Kukui, and this is on-type, but you don't have the 6-star EX Hilbert, so then you want Zinnia to Sync Nuke. Then you can run a build focus on Sync Nuking with Double Down as well as Syncing tiles, but you drop a Power Posture, so most of your damage will be made up through the super effective Sync Nuke. But let's say that you want to run a Sync Nuking Zinnia off-type, then you can do something like this with Crit Task of 32 instead. So it's really hard for me to suggest a global BP Zinnia build because it absolutely depends on who you are partnering with here. Like you can also go for hard Power Posture with attack debuffs through a partner. By the way, I was drilling Samuro as a partner because it has access to Waterfall Aggravation 1, so that is an additional flinching roll so that you can activate Harry Tree, and it complements Zinnia very well. Although, you can also run Lycia as a partner. Lycia and Altaria, I just always forget about her because I don't pull her yet, but she's really good because she activates a ton of team skills alongside BP Zinnia, and she has Twister Aggravation 1 to attempt to give her and Zinnia the Harry Tree boost. So if you can afford the offensive Omni buffing, she makes for a very good offensive partner. It really depends, but ultimately, Zinnia is not lacking in multipliers. You set them up and oh boy, she is murdering things. Now, you might have heard and noticed that there is some real fancy 5-star BP simpers with master passives, and they take a special ticket to unlock them. That ticket costs 10,000 BP, so that's going to be a few months down the line with constant play. It's going to be a real long time before we get to recruit these BP simpers, unless DNA gets more humble with spreading the BP. But I gotta do this analysis at some point, so here we have Player and Cobalion, and this is a fine type support, the third of its kind after Maylin and Support Primeape, and you can maybe argue that Cobalion outclasses them, but Maylin still has her Drain Punching niche, while Support Primeape has that super spammy one-bar move that has auxiliary utility in Champion Stadium. But while Cobalion has a stronger utility. You've got a 50 tier bulk, okay attack, I can do meme showcases with this, and decent speed for a support. This would work okay with Fast Track 2 if you really want to. Then we have Rocket Smash, 50% chance of debuffing enemy defense, enhanced by Honor Roll 1. So this is just like Tech Primeape, where you have a guaranteed defense debuffs, and it's a decent way of enhancing your strikers' damage. So I think this works better with Defense Crush 2 as a lucky skill if you're hard focusing on this, but well. Dark Hidden Plus is fantastic on any unit that can have it, and Sacred Sword is an okay tribal move that ignores enemy stat increases. But when you reliably self-buff crit, then it doesn't matter because crits bypass enemy defensive buffs anyway. And Justice for All is +2 defense for the entire party as well as gauge acceleration. So we have a bit of a conundrum here because you don't want to spam this so you can have prolonged gauge acceleration for a longer encounter, but you also want to spam the turn move so you can have the defense buffs. So perhaps I will pair this with somebody like Dawn, who can tank better, has the heals, and she can get you the early defense buffs so you can maintain the gauge acceleration with Cobalion's turn move. The Synchro doesn't have a side effect, but you are probably most curious about the Master Passive. You've got Fighting Teamwork. This is a watered-down version of Galar Flag Bearer, so you've got a 10% damage increase, 10% damage reduction, so it's global, it's for both special and physical moves, and with Fighting Team skills, it's enhanced, so you can have up to a 20% damage increase and 14% damage reduction. So purely for the increases, I wouldn't focus too hard on bringing fighting type strikers alongside Cobalion, because the bonus is not that massive, unlike Hoenn Pride or Hoenn Spirit, but it's a decent master passive considering it's free to play. You know, a free critical strike 1 as well as the damage filter is quite handy relative to other supports that you could bring instead. And you also got the Team Fast Track 4, quite handy. It's a party-wide speed increases, so Cobalion can also handle that. 50% chance of proccing when you attack, and First Aid 4 for a minor healing boost. Yeah, quite solid. Dire Hero Plus carries this super hard, but it's more offensively oriented. The strange part is that you are not buffing attack, so you need your striker to be able to do that, or bring us another supporter who can also handle it. Maybe Lily, I don't know. It depends on your team building skills and what you have available. So, do we need to talk about the grid? This is a pipe dream, just like 3-5 Rosa. 3-5 Cobalion is unrealistic for a vast majority of players because, first of all, you need to get the 10,000 BP to even recruit Cobalion, and then you can either spend very valuable 5-star support candies, which I do not recommend, or you can wait a year and a half to get another 10,000 BP so that you can get another copy of Cobalion, and then also skip Regirock so you can get there faster. Well, I guess it's still worth looking at. The 1-5 is trash. The 2-5 has endurance, helpful to survive a random critical hit you may not be expecting. And also the random garbage that BP Surge and BP Morty got. I don't think I need to repeat that. The 3-5 gives you healthy healing. This is pretty much a mandatory tile for any Cobalion grid, unless you can give him regeneration through Sycamore's turn move, for example. But this is innate recovery and is quite handy. You should always get this. You can also go for Shielded Squad on the turn move. So that means that by using the turn move twice, you maximize defense for the entire party. And this is especially helpful for hyper-offensive Champion Stadium clears. And with this, you can afford to forfeit the turn move MP Refresh. You don't have to roll for the RNG to get maximum stats, though this is still handy purely to refresh the gauge acceleration. You also get Dire Heal plus MP Refresh, mostly useless except for Villa climbing, but the most fun tile here is Rock Smash Ripple Effect 4. So you already have a Rock Smash with guaranteed debuffs on a roll 1. And with this, you have a 50% chance of spreading it to the entire enemy team. So that's an incorporated lead that Cobalion can pull off, and that's really good. I like that a lot. So the standard build I would run would be something like this, and maybe drop the MP Refresh if you don't care about the gauge acceleration refresh, and go for other defensive tiles. Synchro Healing, I guess, though the waste of a single is unfortunate. And a Sacred Sword MGR3. You kind of have to work with things that are around here, because going down here would take a lot of energy. Like Stalwart, Unbending, and Quick Cure are 8 energy for no good reason, so it's quite restrictive. We don't have a lot of wiggle room here. And the build I would run more often will be Rock Smash Ripple Effect 4. Tighten up one, I guess, so you can have some source of special defense buffs if you are tanking with Cobalion. But yeah, guaranteed debuffs that can be AoE is very strong utility, and you don't take that for granted. Not a whole lot of units can do that. And specifically, Cobalion is covering a very good niche. It has gauge acceleration, speed buffs, defense buffs, and guaranteed crit. And only one other unit in the game can provide that, and that is, of course, Signature Blue. Now, I am not saying that Cobalion is Signature Blue tier, but it does cover a very specific niche that you can only find on a gacha Poké Fair. So between this and Regirock, that we're going to check out in a little bit, Cobalion has more value in the long run. Last but not least, we have the final BP Sync for this batch, Player and Regirock. And this guy is structured nearly identically to Cobalion in that it is a 5-star rock-type support with a master passive, but the kit covers different metrics. The stats are decent, similar to Cobalion. You've got good bulk, accounting the master passive, and decent attack, but the problem is that your moves suck, so it doesn't matter. You also got the Rock Tomb 2 bars, always drops the target is speed, so it helps for Cakewalk and Hunter's Instinct strikers. Has accuracy issues though. X-Attack Call to help strikers, and this here is a mistake from the Synchro helper side. It hasn't been updated yet. So when Regirock was first Datamined, it had the double edge, and it was also a mistake in-game, that the grid has tiles for rock throw, so it was sketchy. But then DNA updated it so that it doesn't have double edge, but rock throw instead, and that kills some viability for this unit, because I really want the double edge to make offensive memes, but I suppose rock throw is nice for a 1-bar spam, so it's fine. The turn move is the most important part of the kit here. It's a potion on steroids. It restores HP 40%, but it gives you +2 defense and regeneration. Now, this has its own array of issues because it's the only way that Regirock can raise defense, which reminds me a lot of Cheryl and Blissey. So Cheryl also has this really potent turn move that is a potion that also buffs defense and special defense, but what usually happens is that you don't want to use the turn move used to buff defenses because you will be wasting the heal, but it's your only source of defenses, and what ends up happening is that you don't use it. So then you take the full brunt of an attack and then spend the turn move so that you can take full advantage of the healing. And the whole point of buffing defenses is mitigating damage. And yeah, you can work around it, but I just really wish we didn't have to deal with this interaction. We've also got the Sync move, it doesn't have any side effect, and the Rock Teamwork works just like Cobalion's master passive. 10% damage reduction, 10% damage increase for both special and physical damage, and with rock theme skills, you've also got a bit of a boost to the bonus, up to a 20% damage increase and 14% damage reduction. So I wouldn't focus too hard just to enhance the master passive, but it will help if you do so. You've got Last Word. When you faint, you deliver some AoE damage to the enemy, which helps if you give it some crit buffs, because Regirock's attack stat is okay for supported standards. You got Impervious to prevent stat drops altogether. That is a really strong passive. And Endurance, so you ensure that Regirock always survives at least one attack. I have a couple massive qualms with Regirock. The first of which is it doesn't have a strong niche, for the lack of a better word. Like, off the top of my head, I cannot think of any strong synergies that Regirock covers. Now, don't get me wrong, attack buffs plus defense plus potion is very strong. And it's a good defensive niche, but I can use other simpers for that, specifically Skyla with Fanfare 2 or Springborg. So what is Regirock bringing to the table? It has speed debuffs, and it's a rock type with a master passive. So, okay, let's pair it with other rock types. But let's say that I am trying to enhance Brock and Onyx, and I am helping him out with the speed debuffs, because I do have a Ripple Effect 4 on Rock Tomb. But what Brock really wants is crit buffs, which Regirock doesn't offer. And, Brock already has Potion and the defensive buffs, so... And maybe I can try to pair this with Kukui, but Kukui also needs the crit buffs as well as Sand, and Regirock is not covering that. So I feel that you can cover its functions with other simpers, or at least partially do so, while getting a stronger utility through better multipliers that Regirock fails to provide. Besides the speed debuffs, I don't think that's just good enough. Note that Regirock is not an amazing Olivia partner. Yes, you're helping her top off her attack, but she benefits much more from Sand as well as Kukui as a partner to activate the theme skills as well as getting those defense drops. So until we get more rock types, in current meta, Regirock's master passive is not that amazing. And now, my second qualm with Regirock is the weakness. Normally, I always skip over the weakness of Simpers because you can work around it, but for Regirock, it's quite fatal, because it doesn't say here, but Regirock is weak to fighting. And that is quite possibly the worst weakness they could have given to Regirock, because a lot of physical attackers in this game have fighting type moves. For example, 80% of the Bruno and Marshall iterations in Champion Stadium are going to obliterate Regirock through the weakness alone. And due to the fact that you don't have direct defense buffs, it's also hard to attempt to tank them. But you do have the recovery and endurance, so maybe you can attempt that. But a fighting weakness is really unfortunate for Regirock, so... I just wanted to warn you about this, because using Regirock as a physical tank is the most obvious application, but Machamp's close combats are going to eat it alive, so be careful. As for the grid, the 1-5 is wordless, you kinda know the drill. Oh, you got Rock Tomb accuracy, that's kinda neat. The 2-5 gives you different passives compared to other BP simpers, because Regirock has innate impervious, so DNA had to switch Unbending and Stalwart around, but you get Unyielding too. So this is a 30% chance of proccing Endure again when you get hit by a fatal blow, so that can be handy. But you also have a Power Surge 5, and this is Regirock's only multiplier through the whole entire grid, so this is its only attempt at becoming a legitimate striker. And I don't think it's going to work out given the lack of sync multipliers. Like, simpers like Brock can make a lot of their damage through sync nukes, which Regirock doesn't have. So if it had double edge, then you could push yourself to power serves on your own accord, but now we don't have double edge, we have Rock Throw instead. So you need to wait for the enemy to push you into power serves range and then maybe turn them away with Phoebe's Inspire Ire. So I guess I will do it for the meme showcase in like 3 years if the game doesn't shoot down, but that's not going to work too well. Now the standard Regirock you should run is something like this: First Aid 4 for extra recovery and save a turn move. You have a couple Master Healer 1 tiles as well as NPR 3 for the turn move, so that's Pikachu's Potion Efficiency with the defensive perks, and then Rock Tomb NGR just because it's on the way to Fear State 4, though nothing else is too handy over here. Ripple Effect 4 is not that useful unless you are focusing on some form of K-Walk or Hunter Instinct Striker, but if you do, then you have to drop a Master Healer tile because there is no way to grab all this energy, or maybe skip Fear State 4 or something. And the other build I would run would be focus around X Attack Call MPR and then skip Fear State 4 so you can go for Rock Throw MGR, because having a 1-bar spam is quite handy for a support, but that's as far as Regirock's utility goes. It's rather limited. I don't see any big niches, so just go for Cobalion. In practice, that is much better. And that's that for BP Simpers. Now we can check out the rest of the free-to-play content, and it turns out that Solgaleo is rerunning with a grid. And it finally has some multipliers to catch up with today's standards. Though I've seen some widespread disappointment with this grid, which is understandable because we've had some monstrous free-to-play legendaries like Grid Cyrus, Getsis, Grid Silver, Sycamore. And Solgaleo is not quite on that level, but it can do good work in super effective contexts, so I'm not complaining. This is decent. And, well, as a legendary sync pair, this guy has the free 5/5 2020, and this is one of the earliest legendaries alongside Giovanni. We've had the chance to play with this for a really long time, so I am accustomed to Solgaleo's playstyle. This is a free-to-play steel-type striker, of which we barely have any. There is Molayne, who is a lot squishier and also lacks crit buffs. There is Wickstrom, who has his whole garbage issues involving King Shield, and the Striker Magneton, who is okay. I piloted it to success before, but it's nothing impressive. Pre-grid Solgaleo can be considered the better of the bunch because of its access to full potential. Now with the grid it's absolutely better, but it always felt so lacking in practice. And that is weird because if you look at his stats, they are amazing. This is better than Sacian. Better attack, defense, and special defense, so Solgaleo is quite tanky for a striker. And the speed is good. This is Sabrina tier, so why does the term Slowgaleo exist? There is a couple of reasons to it. The first obvious one is the turn move, because it consumes gauges. For 3 gauges, you get +3 attack, special attack, and accuracy, and that is quite handy. You only need crit buffs, but you maximize Sunsteel Strike and Focus Blast simultaneously, while also fixing Focus Blast and Metal Claw accuracy. So I don't think it's about turn move when, before Fierce Sync, you are used to spamming turn moves anyway, so Solgaleo should have the gauges to consume it. But when it has a decent speed stat, what is the real problem? The real issue are its conventional partners, because as a striker you want to run some speed support, so yeah, bring a Skylo for speed buffs. But then who do you run on the tier slot? You have to run crit support, and as a free-to-play player, your only option here would be Mei-Ling, because this is a player character. You cannot run Torchic alongside Solgaleo, and Torchic is a deceptively speed support. If you're only bringing it for crit, it's also helping you quite a bit on gauge, because it has a really high speed stat, where Mei-Ling, comparatively speaking, tanks your speed. Rock Smash without MGR is difficult to spam, so when you also count for the fact that you have Sunsteel Strike without MGR, then, oh boy, if you don't have a Ghost MGR 9 on Skyla, you are going to run into gauge issues, and maybe you have to skip a few actions here and there, and it just keeps snowballing from there, but really, if you run a speedier support, then it's not a big issue. Somebody like Sycamore or Sabrina for crit buffs. And now that we have the double MGR on Sunsteel Strike, I don't think this is going to be an issue at all in the future. The second issue is its power, because theoretically it's also an amazing striker, because it has a really good attack with a decent 3-bar move. Sunsteel Strike has piercing blows innately, so it's also its greatest perk, and Focus Blast is 170 BP, but Solgaleo has nerf special attack to make up for the fact that it has a really high BP on Focus Blast, and Sunsteel Strike is 120. Not phenomenal, but hey, it's okay. But without any multipliers to enhance it, then you can really feel Solgaleo's age as the game progresses. Because then we had Steven introduced, who has his Haymaker Signux, and then Gloria with her innate Behemoth Blade multipliers, and there is an addition of Raihan, who has his absurdly strong Steel Beam with a Tough Cookie, and well, Solgaleo just couldn't keep up with the metagame, unfortunately, but hey, the grid is going to patch it a little bit. And finally, we have Impervious, innate immunity to stat drops, great for some random champion stage, like fighting weak Karen who has this courage, things like that. Now, Solgaleo's grid grants it the multipliers it was begging for. First of all, I want you to pay attention to the fact that the BP tiles are very cost efficient. Normally, I wouldn't make a point on this, but for Solgaleo, you can totally grab all the BP tiles and it wouldn't affect your general energy management because this is 15 BP for 10 energy. That is quite solid, and it can give you a head start for your other multipliers. So most Solgaleo grids are gonna be grabbing a bunch of these, and you have a super duper effective too, so it helps both Sun Steel Strike and Focus Blast. You have Power Stars 5, difficult to set up, though you have Endurance, so maybe I can do some of my Phoebe Taunt strats with that, and then you also have Brain Teaser, which is the most strange multiplier here, because it enhances BP when the target's special defense is lowered, which is meant to play with Focus Blast, but you can run it with Sun Steel Strike as a proper multiplier, though debuffing special defense is incongruent with Sun Steel Strike, but maybe you can use Sinusub Leaf for Sundering 9 and debuff defense and special defense simultaneously, and that's really going to bump up Brain Teaser, as well as Sun Steel Strike's innate advantage of hitting from the physical end. But, well, with all those considerations, the rest of Solgaleo's grid is kinda dry. You have some crit buffs, you have Sharp Entry 1 as well as Focus Rush 1, so if you really want to, Solgaleo can buff its own crit, and there's also Sync Freebie, but with the dual MGR on Sun Steel Strike, I don't think this is nearly as good as it should have been. But if you are still afraid of Solgaleo's gauge issues, you can solvent them through that passive. Solgaleo still has a slow crit ramping, so I would heavily suggest that you run some crit support alongside it, so you can focus more tiles on power, but on all the grids I am going to show you, you can still drop some power tiles, so you can grab a Sharp Entry 1, and at least at a minimum run it with some +1 crit buffer like 1-5 Sabrina, 1-5 Lyra, 1-5 Kiawe, or Milin, people like that. With all that said, the standard Solgaleo grid I would run is something like this. Take it to a Steel Weak stage in Champion Stadium and it will hurt. You grab all the power tiles, all the Sun Steel Strike BP tiles available, plus 30 attack, so you reach 460, and that is quite powerful, as well as super duper effective and Sync Freebie plus Syncing Tiles just because, but this is not a Sync Nuke. I think a Sync Nuke is being misused as a term because it's very widespread, but if you don't have a Sync multiplier, you are not Sync Nuking. This is just your run-of-the-mill striker Sync move, so yeah. But with a dual MGR on Sun Steel Strike, you will not have gauge issues with this, so yeah, this is really good. But the thing I would recommend doing will be dropping some attack tiles and Sync Freebie so you can grab a Brain Teaser. And I would only do this if you have a Signasud Leaf, because she has Sundering 9, so that's special defense debuffs as well as defense debuffs, and then Sun Steel Strike can start to really hurt. But if you only have a Koga for Venoshock Mind Games 9 or Palentine's Dawn, then well, I don't think it's as potent because you don't have the defense debuffs. But that's the one grid. The other one I would run would be Power Reserves alongside Phoebe for taunting. So you tank with Solgaleo, wait until it drops until critical HP, and then use Unbreakable Bonds, Inspire Ire, so that you can draw the aggro away. And the reason I recommend Phoebe is because she has the crit buffs, and Unbreakable Bonds has a couple uses, so you can draw aggro twice, and that would be an easy setup. And with Power Reserves 5, Solgaleo can peak in damage, and you also have endurance so you don't die accidentally. But yeah, the obvious Focus Blast grid is something like this. You get super duper effective too, and this, I guess, because you have to Focus Blast MGR too. Not as spammy as Sun Steel Striker with dual MGR, but it helps. And you have Focus Blast on a roll too. So this is a 30% chance of debuffing a special defense, which is a slow ramping, so you want to bring some other support like the aforementioned special defense debuffers, Koga, Valentine's Dawn, maybe Erika, people like that. Or you can drop this if you're doing that, so you can go for more special attack, just a tiny bit, maybe Sync Freebie, though if you're bringing this on Fighting Weak stage, you can get better value from using a 6-star EX support buff or something like that. But yeah, this is very, very viable. So Solgaleo's grid is okay, it's decent, but it's not enough to make it compete with the Steel-type Titans in metagame, because its better multipliers have very hard scaling. It's really difficult to debuff special defense with unlimited units, and Power Surge 5 only works in specific contexts, so it's an unfortunate situation for this guy. And that's everything regarding Solgaleo. I really want to show that Sun Steel Strike Brain Teaser Grid. I think this can do really well, specifically with Signature Leaf, but everything else is somewhat standardish. Use your multipliers, set them up, you'll be good to go. Nothing groundbreaking though, so don't expect the Solgaleo to off-type 1500 points Master Mode without some massive support. And to close things up, I'm gonna be reviewing the Tangela Egg Family, the only new Eggmon introduced in this Datamine. And the reason I am doing this is because I asked you guys whether I should do this in a community post, and the reception was mostly positive, so I'm here to deliver. Now, this is all information I'm gonna be regurgitating from my Eggmon compendium, so if you just want the breeding format, it's linked in the description. And the Synchro Helper site hasn't updated with the Tangela Egg Family yet, at least I don't see it anywhere around here, so we'll just have to deal with the Cerabi UI for a little bit. But first we have a support Tangela, yeah. Oh, before we even start, just a small disclaimer. Please remember these are Eggmons. Keep your expectations low, because these units are built specifically to be outclassed by 5-star gachas. So you really gotta know the ins and outs of the game to truly capitalize from their advantages. Now, Support Tangela is perhaps the best of the batch because it has the better utility. It's called Reflect, which is a first for a free-to-play unit, so this is the only means of obtaining this field effect besides Sabrina, and if you really want to take advantage of it, it will be on Champion Stadium with permanent field effects, because one thing is a tank like Dawn, and another is Dawn with grass support type skills and Reflect, so you can really beef her up with that. You also got a really spamming 1-bar move, so easy to feed on a 4-bar move cycle, and you've got +4 attack buffs and +2 defense and speed buffs for the entire party, so that can be handy to top off some striker or defense buffs, so you don't have to run X defense all NPR on Dawn or take flight NPR on Skyla. Now, the more interesting part here, the bread and butter, is Healing Zone 2. And this is really massive for an Eggmon. It means that you have infinite restoration on Solarized team structures. And Support Tangela happens to synergize well with Solarized users, because you can pair it with Lyra for grass support type skills, that's +120 HP for entire party once again. And you can complement Light Screen with Reflect, so she can tank better. And you can also use Support Tangela alongside Silver, because you can provide the attack buffs he needs to enhance his physical sync, as well as a little bit of speed for inertia if you don't have no means of raising that, and it can help there. But more importantly, you have the 1-bar spam with the 12.5% HP recovery under Solarize, so under that structure I can see Tangela performing decently. Next we have Tech Tangela. Tech Tangela is a paralysis applicator, which is incredibly unfortunate because we don't need this in current metagame. This is a grass type paralysis applicator, so it's in direct competition with Erika and Tangela. So, looking at Tech Tangela, it has First Aid 2, so yeah, some recovery. You get regeneration of the turn move as well as some defenses, so it's more defensively oriented. So this has some focus on recovery, and then we have Troublemaker 1 to guarantee that Stun Spore lands if the enemy has neutral elevation. So, I mean, it's okay, but we already have free-to-play units who do this. Erika and Vileplume, who have infinite restoration on their Sunny Weather, just like a Support Tangela. Then you also have Kalem and Meowstic, who are far better at generating engage with their Gargantuan Speed stat, and self-heals with a turn move. And now newcomer BP Surge, who also has accurate Thunder Waves with his Greed, and also offers much better utility with his buffs. So I think this is just outclassed, and there is not a big reason to use it. And finally we have Striker Tangela, used from Process of Elimination, and Striker Tangela is a really weird baby Lysander, because it has a ton of recovery. You got First Aid 2, you got Recuperation 1, so you get some health when you sink, and the trainer move gives you regeneration, so yeah, you don't have to worry about the striker Tangela dying if you use it, but it's sacrificing offensive self-sufficiency to get a restoration. So you only have defenses as well as attack, and it needs crit support. And your main damaging move is Power Whip, which is strong, but it has accuracy issues. So you need to pair this with somebody like Springborg to fully fix it and not worry about misses. But the real issue with this unit is that because you have all this restoration, you are sacrificing multipliers, so it's not going to reach the damage threshold of other striker Eggmons like Striker Magmar or Striker Kangaskhan, Striker Raichu, Striker Blastoise. I could go on, but the gimmick here is restoration, and if you can fix Tangela's self-sufficiency issues, it probably means that you have better strikers to use anyway. So this is mostly for funsies because I don't know, it's needed to have all this recovery and a really strong grass type move, but that's where the striker Tangela stops. It's mildly better than other Eggmons, but that's about it. And we're finally done, dude. Checking my recording time, we are over 1 hour, so that's going to be real fun to review for audio balancing issues. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you stuck around for this long, I thank you very much for your support. But that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see you another time.